And welcome back to part 2 of this week's Lenormand and Tarot Tag Team. Just to kind of recap things, the cards for this week's reading, starting with the Lenormand, were the ship, the dog, and the mice. And so now, having done the Lenormand's perspective in part 1, we're going to turn things over to Tarot. And I go with the playing cards that are inserted on the Lenormand cards to give me an indication of where to go with the tarot cards. So we have on the ship, we have the 10 of spades. On the dog, we have the 10 of hearts. And on the mice, we have the 7 of clubs. And so the corresponding tarot cards for me, for these cards are, starting with the ship, we have the 10 of swords. For the 10 of hearts, we have the 10 of cups. And for the 7 of clubs, we have the 7 of wands. Okay, so now, keeping with the consistency of the Lenormand reading, I'm going to start with the 10 of cups first. The 10 of cups being the center card. If you remember, it was also in last week's tarot reading in the position here because it's connected to the dog, so the dog was in this position last week as well. So the 10 of cups is a card that represents happiness. If life were a story, and I'm going to share a little secret, everybody's life is a story. It's their own unfolding story. But if life were a story, this would be the part of the story where we get to the end and they say, and they lived happily ever after. So this is the marriage and family card, and you can tell by the image. And I should say the deck that we're using, because I hadn't introduced the deck yet, is the Infinite Visions Tarot by Gloria Jean, and I will post a link to it in the description box below like I did last week. But getting back to the particular card here, the 10 of Cups, if you look at the image, there is a man and a woman, and they're looking at 3 infant children in a crib on a bed. So this is, of course, that's why it's called the marriage and family card. But the thing about family for me is this. Family can be the people that we are born into, the families of origin. But as we grow up and move out into the world, we create families of our own. So going with the idea here, the man and the woman, they became family when they got married. So sometimes we choose family. I have lots of people who consider me to be family who I am not blood related to. So the 10 of Cups is asking us to look at families of all types. And we live in a day and age where families come in all shapes and forms and variations. They come in the traditional and the non-traditional. But family is who we choose to bring into our lives and create family with. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about families. Families is not just a family that you're born into. Keeping in mind with that, the 10 of Cups is about your soul family. This is about spiritual communities, because the 10, especially with the 10 of Cups, for me represents community. And so this card can represent the spiritual community. So it's like, who would you consider to be not just your family of flesh, but your soul family, your spirit family, things of that nature. So keep that in mind with the 10 of Cups. The 10 of Cups is also about satisfaction and the emotional rewards of life. The 10 of Pentacles, which is not here, is like looking at success and happiness from a material side. This card is asking us to look at it from the emotional and spiritual side. So the challenge with this card, though, is that sometimes, and I'm looking at the imagery because I'm thinking, if it were me and I was the man in this particular picture with the woman looking at 3 infant children, I'd be like, I'd be happy in the moment, and then I might have a moment of sheer panic and like overwhelm. So sometimes the 10 of Cups, we're asking to consider the things that we find emotionally overwhelming. So that's the 10 of Cups. Now the 10 of Swords is the card to the left, and so now we have a pattern with a repeating number. So 10s in tarot represent a state of completion, something coming to an end. It represents something ending so a new cycle can start. And so now if you remember from our Lenormand reading, we had the coffin come up as the final summation card, and that's a card of things coming to an end in the state of completion. So I find it very interesting that a message is kind of shifting over from one part of the reading to the next part. So tens are about about finality, things coming to an end, completion. So there may be some aspect of our lives that's coming to a state of completion this week. Now, having said that, one aspect of the Ten of Swords is about finality. So the Ten of Swords can be a troubling card for most people when it comes up. And this is a softer image of it, because a typical image has a man typically laying on the ground face down with 10 swords in his back. And so that can represent, it's not just over, it's really over. Sometimes it's like that expression of overkill. So it's not just like something being kind of done. I mean, it's done and it's really done. So having said that, this card is asking us to look at the ways in which we might think, because swords represent what we think as cups represent what we feel. So the Ten of Swords is asking us to consider how we think we might be stuck, or the way we might be limiting ourselves. Now, another meaning of the Ten of Swords, and it's attributed to this appearance of the snake in the Lenormand reading. This Ten of Swords in that regard can represent doubt, it can represent suspicion, and it can represent betrayal, because it goes with the imagery of being stabbed in the back, which is a pun for betrayal, which was something that I had said with the snake in the previous reading. So there's another carryover from one reading to the next with the same kind of message. So the thing about betrayal and lies, I will offer this because I tend to look at tarot both as the way we experience things with other people and how we might also experience those things with ourselves. So this card could be asking us to consider, what ways do we doubt ourselves? Because when we doubt ourselves, we keep ourselves stuck. In what ways do we lie to ourselves? In what ways do we betray ourselves? Just as we experience betrayal from other people, we also sometimes betray ourselves. So I want to offer this week that the Ten of Swords may be asking us to kind of consider, in what ways are we lying to ourselves, and in what ways do we betray ourselves? Because this card says, if that's the case, if that's true for us, how can we work on eliminating that, no longer doing that? Another thing about the Ten of Swords for me is that this is a card that can represent drama and melodrama. I sometimes see this as, I hear in my head when I see this card, I'm dating myself because I love soap operas. And most people know that if you've watched my videos long enough to know that I do love soap operas. So I hear the original theme from The Young and the Restless. And so for me, that always represents drama. And then it kind of shifts to a more contemporary version of the Mary J. Blige song, No More Drama. So when I hear those two together, it represents on what ways can we eliminate the drama and the melodrama from our lives. So sometimes it's like, considering, are we around drama kings and queens, or are we being our own drama king or queen, and how can we cut that out? And the only way you can eliminate that or stop that or put an end to that is to first identify what the need for the drama is. What do you get out of always being embroiled in drama? So I'm seeing that. But typically the Ten of Swords is just a lifestyle change card. It says on some level, you've gotten to the end of the road. You can't go any further going down this road. It's time to make a change. They say on some level, when people hit bottom, once you hit bottom and rock bottom, that there's only one way to go, and that's up. So that's this card. It's like, okay, it's time to make a change because you can't go any further on the road that you're going down. It's time to make a change. So that's the Ten of Swords. Now going to the card on the other side, we have the Seven of Wands. And so I love this card in light of the Ten of Swords. The Seven of Wands is a card, that says we are facing and overcoming challenges. So this card is saying not only do you have what it takes to face the challenges, you also have what it takes to overcome them. Especially with the Ten of Swords, sometimes we may be feeling we're in a position where, we want to just give up. We just feel like nothing's happening. What's the point of it all? When the Seven of Swords comes up, it's asking us to not give up. Don't throw in the towel. You have what it takes to overcome any obstacle that comes your way. This card is just about standing your ground in that truth. This card now, not just standing in, standing your ground, but this card can also be about standing up for yourself. Especially in light of the drama and maybe the limitation and restriction that we may be experiencing from other people. And if you've been feeling like you've been betrayed or lied to from someone else, this card says it's time for you to stand up for yourself. This card, the Seven of Wands, is about being assertive and aggressive. And so this week, be mindful of how can you stand up for yourself in a way that's empowering to you. The Ten of Swords would say you've been disempowered enough, and so that show is over. It's time to have a curtain call and take a bow, because it's time to stand up for yourself. Wands are all about image and identity, so what new image would you need to project that strikes of confidence, of determination, and being victorious? It's about not being the victim anymore. Over here on this side, it's about being the victor. So here's the thing about that too. When we change the way we interact with other people, they have one or two options. They either can get on board or they can get off. So here you have to keep in mind that you are teaching people how to interact with the new you, the you that you are becoming. And so you have to allow them the choice of whether they're going to remain connected to you or choose not to. And they have every right, and you have to honor their choice and their decision. But this is about standing up for yourself. Now, the other thing with the Seven of Wands, and this is a departure from the theme that I'm seeing in the cards, but whenever I see the Seven of Wands, this is a card of self-employment. This is a card of the teacher, the writer, and the student. So those of you who are watching who maybe are feeling the pull of being self-employed, this card is a strong yes to that and moving into that now. This card would suggest that it's going to be a challenge, it's going to be an uphill battle, but you have what it takes to rise to the top. And so just remember that in those moments when it's challenging and you feel like you want to give up, this card is saying, remember why you got started, because wands are all about inspiration and motivation. So remember what it is that got you started doing what it is that you're doing. If you're a writer, this is a wonderful card to kind of look at, especially if you've had writer's block, going with the Ten of Swords, maybe you've had writer's block. This is the time to get actively engaged in the writing process again. If you're engaged in a new course of study, this card is saying it may be challenging. You may have a steep learning curve, but you can do it. Whatever it is that we are embarking on with the Seven of Wands, it says that you can do it. Yes, it's going to be challenging, but you can do it. So that's the message with those cards. And this just popped into my head, so I'm gonna say it. I had talked about the idea about standing up for yourself. And when we're in those moments of drama and melodrama, I'm looking at the man here in the Seven of Wands who is trying to approach the man standing on the top here, and I'm looking at the ladder next to it. So I'm looking at that, and sometimes what it is that we're being asked to rise above the drama. It's about, if people are going to approach you, it's about having people come up to your level and you not reduce yourself or bring yourself down to their level. So keep that in mind when you are reacting and responding to things this week. Is it that you're allowing somebody to come up to the level that you're at, or are you finding yourself coming down to somebody else's level? So keep that in mind. I wanted to say that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a moment, and this just popped into my head. So I do the hidden dynamics with the Lenormand and the playing cards. I'm going to do a variation of that right now with these cards. And so the variation I'm going to do is I'm going to take the number of the cards, the Ten of Swords and the Seven of Wands, and I'm going to look for the corresponding major arcana card that's going to give us some more information, possibly about the bigger picture, about the dynamics. So having said that, Ten of Swords is 10, so the major arcana card in the deck that corresponds to the number 10 is the Wheel of Fortune. So now the Wheel of Fortune is a card for me that represents being at a major turning point in life. This card is about growth and evolution. This card is about opportunity. So we may be faced with an opportunity for our own growth and evolution this week. The Wheel of Fortune says that the opportunity may come, or it may look like a strange twist of fate. I'm hearing that song in my head by Olivia Newton-John from when she and John Travolta were in a movie called Twist of Fate. So be on the lookout for things like little serendipities, strokes of good luck, fortune, little twists of fate, little things that are happening, and then you see the bigger picture. It's revealed, but it happens in a strange occurrence, something that it wouldn't happen any other way, and you just have to stand back and take awe of it. So I'm seeing that. The Wheel of Fortune is also an opportunity for us to look at any cycles and patterns that repeat, because here we have the flower of life. And so that is a circular image, and so since it's a circular image, it represents cycles and patterns for me. So we may be seeing cycles and patterns show up this week. And going with the Ten of Swords being the card that's underneath it, this may be a week to break or interrupt certain cycles or patterns, especially if they are not working in our favor, if they're no longer serving and supporting us. Because this card for me can sometimes represent the ups and downs of life. And so if it was a down cycle, then this card would suggest like the emotional roller coaster. And we get to a point on the emotional roller coaster where we say, stop the ride, I want to get off. So be mindful of, if you get to that place and you're saying, stop the ride, I want to get off, then be looking at if there's a cycle or a pattern that's connected to that. And that is your acknowledgement that it's time to break the cycle and interrupt the pattern. So that's the Wheel of Fortune. On the other side, with the Seven of Wands, the corresponding card for that would be the Chariot. Here it is. And the Chariot is an interesting card because it represents, for me, it represents direction, and not just direction, but life direction. So when I'm seeking to ask the tarot, where am I going in life? What direction do I need to move in? Where is life taking me? I always think of the Chariot. So that's what this card is about. This card is similar to the ship that showed up in the Lenormand portion of the reading because it's about advancement, it's about progression, it's about moving forward. Now, if we look at the imagery here, we have a charioteer on a chariot with a black horse and a white horse. And so the black and white can represent polar opposites. It can represent extremes. And so it can represent being pulled, the possibility of being pulled in two different directions. And so we're being asked, if that's the case, how can we stay the course? How can we, reach the middle ground? How can we be on the middle of the road, so to speak? So I'm looking at that. And with that idea of being pulled in two directions, it brings me back to the Scythe, which was one of the cards that showed up in the Lenormand portion because it can represent being divided. So one other thing about the Chariot, it rules the sign of Cancer for me, and so I look at that as a family-oriented type sign, and so sometimes this can represent conflict within the family, and notice that the center card here is the Ten of Cups, and I had talked about, family being not necessarily just the family of origin, but also the family that we choose to create, people that we choose to acknowledge as family. So there may be an incident this week that may be involving family that we may have to kind of work through or work around, or maybe come to some level of meeting in the middle instead of, the extremes. So I'm seeing that. Now, it's very interesting that we have the Wheel of Fortune and the Chariot as a combination. I sometimes see them as a new set of wheels because they can represent travel. Both of these cards are travel cards, and that brings us back to the ship, which was the first Lenormand card in the Lenormand reading. And so that's a travel card, and that can represent transport and transportation. So it's very interesting that we have the Wheel of Fortune and the Chariot together, and for me they can represent a new set of wheels, but just travel, just generally speaking. So I want to acknowledge that. And so now the last thing we can do is that we can take, just like I do with the Lenormand, we can take the numbers on all the cards and add them up to see what the final major arcana card is that is going to serve as the essence of the reading. So we have 2 10s and the 7, so that's 27. There are 22 major arcana cards in the deck, so since we have a number that's over 22, I'm going to take the 2 and the 7, add them together, and we have 9. And so the 9th major arcana card is the Hermit. And here it is. And so now the Hermit for me represents wisdom gained through life experience. So when this card shows up, we're being asked to take a step back, because this card is also about taking time out, being alone. It's about contemplation and asking ourselves, based on where we're at in the moment, looking back and saying, what have I learned from the experiences that have come my way? So this may be a time for us to look at what it is that just life is asking us to learn from the everyday experiences that we have. I look at the Hermit and I also think of that expression, being older and wiser. So how have you become wiser as you have become more mature? Because that's another aspect of the Hermit. The Hermit is a card for me that represents, a search for meaning. So it's very interesting that we had the Chariot about direction, and we had the Wheel of Fortune about, a major turning point. We may come to a point in our lives where we're just asking, what's the meaning of it all? And if you're asking that big question, this might be the time for you to go on a search to find the answer to that. And the Hermit card says that's a question that you can only discover the answer to on your own, because this represents doing something on your own. This card represents like seeking the answers within. This is a great meditation card. So I would suggest that if you're, into meditation, this would be a time to really, really go within, get quiet, get still, and see what comes out for you through your time of meditation and contemplation. So those are the cards for the week. Again, we have the Ten of Swords. It's time to make a change. It's time to take a bow. It's time for the curtain to come down on the act in the stage of the play of life and moving on to the next production. The Ten of Cups, coming from a place of being happy and satisfied with where you are at from a spiritual perspective, from where you're at, what you have gained. This may be an issue if we're looking at a family dynamic here, being mindful of, if there is division in the family, how can we start the process of reuniting with those people if that is possible? Sometimes with family, sometimes it's better just to leave things the way they are, and if there is a division that can't be overcome, maybe that's just the way it's supposed to be, and I know that from personal experience. But if there is a way that the damage can be repaired, then maybe step back and say, what can I do on my side of the line that could go towards creating some healing in this experience? And then the Seven of Wands, part of that might be adopting a new role, and that role would be learning to stand up for yourself, learning to assert yourself, learning to be aggressive. This card says, allow people to rise to the occasion, rise to your level, not for you to come down to their level, because all you do is stay mired in the drama that you are trying to get yourself out of. And that doesn't work for you, and it doesn't work for the other person. So these are the tarot cards. This has been the tarot portion of this week's Lenormand Tag-Team reading. And I wish you a tarot-tastic week, and I look forward to sharing this space here again with you in our next video. And until then, take care.